In contemporary Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 28-year-old Sarah Mitchell works as a graphic designer at a small marketing firm, hiding behind oversized sweaters and avoiding social gatherings that once brought her joy. Following a painful breakup 2 years ago, where her ex-boyfriend Marcus cruelly criticized her appearance before leaving her for someone he deemed more attractive, Sarah has retreated into herself, finding comfort only in late-night food deliveries and Netflix marathons in her downtown apartment. Her self-esteem has plummeted to the point where she declines invitations from her best friend Maya, avoids family gatherings, and hasn't updated her social media in over a year. When her younger sister Emma announces her wedding for the following summer and asks Sarah to be her maid of honor, she's forced to confront the reality that she can't hide forever. The story follows Sarah's journey as she reluctantly joins a local community fitness group at Riverside Park, where she meets James, a patient personal trainer recovering from his own struggles with body image after a car accident left him with permanent scars, and Grace, a 45-year-old mother of 3 who becomes an unexpected mentor. Through the changing seasons of Milwaukee, from the harsh winter to the hopeful spring, Sarah learns that transformation isn't just about changing her body, but rebuilding her relationship with herself, discovering that the shame she carried was never truly about her physical appearance, but about deeper wounds of self-worth and the fear of being vulnerable again. As she prepares for her sister's wedding, she must decide whether she's ready to not just transform her body, but to open her heart again when James reveals his growing feelings for her, all while navigating the complex dynamics of American workplace culture, where appearance often seems to matter more than talent. The February wind cut through downtown Milwaukee like a blade, but Sarah Mitchell barely noticed as she hurried from her car to the entrance of Bryant & Associates Marketing. She pulled her oversized black coat tighter around herself, a habit formed not from cold, but from the persistent need to disappear into fabric. The coat was size XXL, though she wore a large, because the extra material made her feel safer somehow, like a turtle retreating into its shell. Inside the warmth of the office building, she kept the coat on until she reached her cubicle on the 3rd floor. Her co-workers were already gathered around the coffee machine, their Monday morning chatter filling the space with an energy Sarah once contributed to, but now carefully avoided. She caught a glimpse of herself in the glass partition as she settled at her desk, quickly looking away from the reflection that had become her enemy. "Sarah, you're here early," called out Jennifer, the office manager, her voice bright with genuine friendliness. "We're planning happy hour for Friday at that new place on Water Street. You in?" Sarah's fingers paused over her keyboard. She could feel Jennifer waiting, could sense the awkward pause stretching. "I'll have to check my schedule," she said, offering the same excuse she'd used for the past 2 years. "Lots of deadlines this week." Jennifer's smile faltered slightly, but she nodded. "Sure, just let me know." As Jennifer walked away, Sarah felt the familiar pang of isolation mixed with relief. She opened her design software and lost herself in the safety of pixels and colors, where she could create beauty without being seen. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya, her best friend since college. "Lunch today? That Thai place you love has a new menu." Sarah stared at the message for a long moment before typing, "Can't today, swamped with work." The lie came easily now, practiced and smooth. The truth was that she'd already planned her lunch, the same as every day, a sandwich eaten alone at her desk, away from the mirrors in the restaurant, away from the possibility of running into Marcus, away from the world that seemed designed to remind her of everything she wasn't. The morning passed in a blur of client emails and design revisions. Around 11, her phone rang with a call from her mother. Sarah let it go to voicemail, already knowing what it would say. Her younger sister Emma's wedding planning was in full swing, and their mother was desperate to get Sarah involved. She listened to the message later. "Honey, Emma really needs to talk to you about the wedding. She has something special to ask you. Please call her back." Sarah's stomach twisted. She loved Emma fiercely, but the thought of being in a wedding, of standing in front of hundreds of people in a dress that would showcase everything she'd learned to hide, made her feel physically ill. She remembered the last wedding she'd attended with Marcus, how he'd spent the reception, pointing out which women looked good in their dresses and which didn't. She'd laughed along then, not realizing she was filing herself in the second category in his mind. That afternoon, unable to avoid it any longer, Sarah called Emma. Her sister's voice bubbled with excitement through the phone. "Sarah, finally! I've been dying to ask you properly. Will you be my maid of honor?" The words hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah could hear the hope in Emma's voice, could picture her sister's face, bright and expectant. Emma was everything Sarah wasn't, confident, radiant, unburdened by the weight of self-doubt. She was getting married to Tom, her college sweetheart, who looked at her like she hung the moon, who would never dream of cataloguing her flaws the way Marcus had done to Sarah. "Emma, I'm honored, but—" "No buts," Emma interrupted. "You're my sister. I can't imagine doing this without you. The wedding is in August, so we have 6 months to plan everything. We'll go dress shopping next month, and I already have ideas for the bachelorette party. It's going to be perfect." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling trapped between her love for her sister and her fear of exposure. "Can I think about it?" The silence on the other end was deafening. When Emma spoke again, her voice was smaller, hurt creeping in around the edges. "You need to think about being my maid of honor." "Sarah, what's going on? You've been so distant lately. Mom's worried. I'm worried. You never come to family dinners anymore. You missed my birthday party." "I know," Sarah whispered, guilt washing over her. "I'm sorry. It's just been a hard couple of years." "Since Marcus," Emma said flatly. "Sarah, it's been 2 years. You can't let that jerk control your life forever." If only it were that simple, Sarah thought. If only she could explain that it wasn't just Marcus, but the way his words had confirmed every negative thought she'd ever had about herself. The way his leaving had felt like validation that she wasn't enough, would never be enough. "I'll do it," Sarah heard herself say, the words escaping before she could stop them. "I'll be your maid of honor." Emma's squeal of delight was so loud, Sarah had to hold the phone away from her ear. As her sister launched into excited plans about dress styles and color schemes, Sarah stared at the calendar on her desk. 6 months. She had 6 months to figure out how to stand beside her beautiful sister without dying of shame. 6 months to somehow become someone who could smile in photos and dance at the reception and pretend that she wasn't drowning in self-loathing. After ending the call, Sarah sat in her cubicle as the office emptied for lunch. She pulled out her phone and, for the first time in months, opened Instagram. Her feed was full of life, friends traveling, celebrating, living. She navigated to her own profile, wincing at the last photo posted over a year ago, a group shot where she'd strategically hidden behind Maya. Her finger hovered over the camera icon, then she closed the app entirely. That evening, Sarah drove home through the darkening streets of Milwaukee, the city lights reflecting off the snow that had started to fall. Her apartment in the 3rd Ward was her sanctuary, a place where she could exist without judgment. She ordered Chinese food from her usual place, the delivery driver knowing her order by heart now. As she ate alone on her couch, watching another episode of a show she'd seen 3 times before, Sarah caught her reflection in the black TV screen during a scene transition. For once, she didn't look away immediately. Instead, she studied the woman looking back at her. Tired eyes, hair pulled back in the same ponytail she'd worn for months, shoulders hunched as if trying to take up less space in the world. This wasn't who she used to be. Before Marcus, she'd been different. Not perfect, never perfect, but alive in a way she couldn't remember how to be anymore. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Thank you for saying yes. You're going to be the most beautiful maid of honor ever." Sarah set down her takeout container, something shifting inside her chest. 6 months. The number echoed in her mind like a countdown. Maybe she couldn't become beautiful in 6 months, but perhaps she could become brave enough to pretend. For Emma, if not for herself. Tomorrow, she decided, she would start researching gyms, not because she believed it would fix everything, but because doing nothing was no longer an option. Her sister deserved a maid of honor who could at least try. The March rain pelted against the windows of Riverside Fitness Center as Sarah stood frozen in the parking lot, her hand gripping the car door handle. She'd driven here 3 times this week, and twice before she turned around without going in. But today was different. Today she'd actually changed into workout clothes, even if they were old sweatpants and an XXL Packers t-shirt she'd bought from the men's section. Inside, the gym was less intimidating than she'd imagined. Instead of the chrome and mirrors she'd expected, Riverside Fitness had warm lighting and motivational quotes painted on exposed brick walls. A woman about her mother's age sat behind the welcome desk, her smile genuine rather than the fake perkiness Sarah had steeled herself against. "First time?" the woman asked gently, as if she could read the terror on Sarah's face. Sarah nodded, unable to trust her voice. "I'm Grace," the woman said, coming around the desk. She was heavier than Sarah, but carried herself with a confidence that seemed impossible. "I teach the beginner's circuit training class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I also happen to know what it's like to walk through those doors for the first time, feeling like everyone's watching." "Ah, they are watching," Sarah said quietly, noticing a few glances from people on treadmills. Grace laughed, a warm sound that filled the space between them. "Honey, half of them are worried about their own form, a quarter are zoning out to their music, and the rest are just impressed you showed up. That's more than most people do." Before Sarah could respond, a man approached them, walking with a slight limp. He was tall and lean, with kind eyes and scars visible on his left arm, despite his long-sleeve shirt. "Grace, the afternoon class is asking about modifications for the shoulder exercises." "James, perfect timing," Grace said. "This is Sarah. She's new." "Sarah, James is one of our trainers. He specializes in adaptive fitness and meeting people where they are." James extended his hand, and Sarah noticed more scars running along his palm. He caught her looking and smiled. "Car accident 3 years ago," he said simply. "Couldn't walk for 6 months, couldn't lift my arm above my shoulder for 8. Now I run marathons, slowly, but I run them." Something in his directness, his lack of shame about his scars, made Sarah relax slightly. "I'm not here to run marathons," she said. I have a wedding in 5 months." "Your wedding?" James asked. "My sister's. I'm the maid of honor." The words still felt foreign in her mouth. "Well, 5 months is plenty of time to build some good habits," James said. "Want to start with something simple? I was about to set up for the basics class. No pressure, just movement." Sarah found herself nodding before her brain could supply the usual excuses. James led her to a quieter corner of the gym where a few other people were gathering. To her surprise, they weren't all fitness models. There was a man who had to be in his 70s, a woman with a knee brace, and a teenager who looked as uncomfortable as Sarah felt. "All right, everyone," James said, his voice carrying without shouting. "Today we're focusing on functional movements, things that help in real life. We're not trying to impress anyone or compete with anyone. We're just trying to be a little stronger than we were yesterday." The next 45 minutes were both harder and easier than Sarah expected. Harder because her body protested movements that should have been simple. Easier because James seemed to have a sixth sense for when someone was struggling, offering modifications without making anyone feel singled out. When Sarah couldn't do a full push-up, he showed her how to do them against the wall. When the teenager couldn't balance during single-leg stands, James shared that he still used a chair for support sometimes. "Your body's been through trauma," he said to the group, though his eyes met Sarah's. "Whether that's injury, illness, or just life, we respect what our bodies have endured. We don't punish them, we work with them." After class, Sarah was gathering her things when Grace appeared with a water bottle. "You did good," she said. "I know it doesn't feel like it, but showing up is the hardest part." "I don't know if I can do this," Sarah admitted, surprising herself with the honesty. Grace sat on the bench beside her. "Can I tell you something? 3 years ago, I was going through a divorce. My ex-husband told me no one would want me because of my weight. I believed him for exactly 1 week. Then I got angry, not at my body, but at the idea that my worth was tied to a number on a scale. I started coming here not to get skinny, but to get strong, to prove to myself that I could do hard things. Did it work? Sarah asked. I deadlifted 200 pounds last week, Grace said with a grin. And more importantly, I stopped needing anyone else's validation. The weight? Some of it came off, some didn't. But the shame? That's what really left. As Sarah drove home, her muscles already beginning to ache, she thought about Grace's words. The shame. That's what she was really carrying, wasn't it? Not just the weight, but the crushing shame of not being enough. Her phone rang as she pulled into her apartment complex. Maya's name flashed on the screen. This time, Sarah answered. "Don't hang up," Maya said immediately. "I'm outside your apartment with wine and sushi, and I'm not leaving until you let me in." Sarah's first instinct was to lie, to say she wasn't home. But her car was parked in its usual spot, and Maya knew it. Defeated, she made her way upstairs to find her best friend sitting on the floor outside her door, takeout bags arranged around her like an offering. "I've given you space for 2 years," Maya said, standing up. "But Emma called me. She's worried you're going to back out of the wedding. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to eat this overpriced sushi, drink this moderately priced wine, and you're going to tell me what's really going on." Inside the apartment, Sarah watched Maya move around her kitchen with the familiarity of someone who'd spent countless nights here before everything changed. Before Marcus, before the shame, before the isolation. "I went to a gym today," Sarah said suddenly. Maya paused, wine bottle in hand. "That's great. How was it?" "Terrible. And also, not terrible." Sarah accepted the glass of wine, taking a larger sip than intended. "I met these people. They were different than I expected." As they ate, Sarah found herself telling Maya about Grace and James, about the wall push-ups and the teenager who couldn't balance. Maya listened without interrupting, without offering the toxic positivity Sarah had feared. "You know Marcus was wrong, right?" Maya finally said. "About everything he said to you." Sarah shrugged. "He just said what everyone thinks." "No," Maya said firmly. "He said what insecure, cruel people say when they want to hurt someone." "Sarah, I've watched you disappear for 2 years. Not your body, you. Your laugh, your creativity, your light. That's what I miss. Not some smaller version of you, just you." They talked until midnight, the conversation flowing easier as the wine bottle emptied. Maya pulled up Emma's wedding Pinterest board, and they scrolled through dress options, venue decorations, and flower arrangements. For brief moments, Sarah forgot to hate herself, caught up in her sister's joy and Maya's commentary on the increasingly elaborate centerpiece options. "Promise me something," Maya said as she prepared to leave. "Promise you'll go back to that gym, not for the wedding, not for anyone else, just to see what happens when you stop hiding." Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. After Maya left, she stood in front of her bathroom mirror, really looking at herself for the first time in months. Her face was flushed from the wine and laughter. Her eyes looked brighter than they had in ages. She was still the same size, still wearing the same oversized shirt, but something was different. She pulled out her phone and did something she hadn't done in 2 years. She took a photo of herself, not for Instagram, not for anyone else, just to remember this moment, this feeling of maybe, possibly, being ready to stop running from herself. A text from an unknown number appeared. "Hey, this is James from the gym. Grace gave me your number. Hope that's okay. Just wanted to say you did great today. If you come back Thursday, we're working on core strength, all modifications available. No pressure, just an invitation." Sarah read the message 3 times. It wasn't flirtatious, wasn't condescending, wasn't anything but kind. She typed back, "I'll be there." As she climbed into bed, her muscles protesting the movement, Sarah thought about transformation. Maybe it wasn't about becoming someone new. Maybe it was about excavating who she'd always been, buried under layers of other people's opinions and her own fear. 5 months until the wedding. But maybe, just maybe, she wasn't counting down to a deadline anymore. Maybe she was counting up to something better. By May, Milwaukee had shaken off the last remnants of winter, and Sarah had developed a routine she never thought possible. Tuesday and Thursday classes with James, Saturday morning sessions with Grace, and solo walks along the lakefront on the other days. Her body had begun to change, not dramatically, but enough that she noticed. More importantly, her mind was changing too. "You're holding back," James said during a Thursday evening session. They were working on boxing combinations, and Sarah was partnered with Grace. "I can see it in your shoulders. You're pulling your punches." Sarah lowered her gloved hands. "I don't want to hurt anyone." "You're hitting pads, not people," Grace laughed, holding up the foam targets. "Trust me, I can take it." James moved closer, adjusting Sarah's stance. She was hyper-aware of his proximity, of the way he'd become comfortable enough to guide her movements without asking permission first. Over the past 2 months, she'd learned his story in pieces. The accident that nearly killed him, the months of physical therapy, the ex-fiancée who couldn't handle the new reality of his body. "Power comes from here," he said, his hand briefly touching her core. "Not from anger, not from force, from your center, from knowing you have the right to take up space." The words hit harder than any physical impact could. Sarah threw the next punch with her whole body behind it, the sound of impact echoing through the gym. Grace actually stepped back, grinning. "There she is," Grace cheered. "There's the fighter." After class, Sarah was unwrapping her hands when James approached with a protein shake. It had become their ritual, these post-workout conversations that started about form and technique, but inevitably wandered into deeper territory. "My sister's having her bachelorette party next weekend," Sarah said, accepting the shake. "I'm terrified." "Because," James prompted, sitting on the bench beside her, "because it's a weekend in Chicago. Clubs, drinking, dress shopping, all the things I've been avoiding." She paused, then added quietly, "Because I'll be the biggest one there." James was quiet for a moment. "Can I show you something?" Without waiting for an answer, he pulled out his phone and scrolled to a photo. It showed him from 3 years ago, before the accident. He was broader, more muscular, stereotypically handsome, in a way that his scars had altered. "This was me before. For months after the accident, I couldn't look at old photos. I thought I'd lost everything that made me valuable." Sarah studied the photo, then looked at James now. He was leaner, yes, marked by his trauma, but there was something in his current presence that the old photo lacked. A depth, a kindness born from suffering and choosing to heal anyway. "You know what I learned?" he continued. "The people who matter don't care about the befores and afters. They care about the during, the showing up, the trying. Your sister didn't ask the old you to be her maid of honor. She asked you, right now, as you are." On that weekend, Sarah found herself in a boutique in downtown Chicago, surrounded by Emma's friends and trying on dresses. She'd dreaded this moment for months, but something was different now. When the saleswoman brought out options, Sarah didn't immediately gravitate toward the tent-like styles designed to hide. Instead, she let Emma guide her toward a deep emerald dress with actual shape to it. "You look beautiful," Emma said when Sarah emerged from the dressing room, and for the first time in 2 years, Sarah didn't immediately deflect the compliment. The bachelorette party was a revelation. After months of isolation, being surrounded by laughter and celebration felt like stepping into sunlight after a long winter. When they went dancing, Sarah actually danced, her body moving with a freedom she'd forgotten it possessed. Grace's voice echoed in her head. "Your body is not an apology." At one point, standing on the rooftop bar overlooking the Chicago skyline, Emma linked her arm through Sarah's. "I'm so glad you're here," she said. "Really here, not just physically. I've missed my sister." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "I've missed me too." When she returned to Milwaukee Sunday night, she had a text from James. How did it go? Instead of texting back, she called him. They talked for 2 hours, Sarah recounting every moment of the weekend, from the dress shopping to the late-night heart-to-hearts with Emma's friends. James shared stories from his weekend, a camping trip where he'd hiked trails he never thought he'd navigate again. "I have a confession," James said, as the conversation was winding down. "Grace didn't actually give me your number that first time. I asked her for it." Sarah's heart skipped. "Why?" "Because I saw something in you that first day. Not potential, not what you could become. What was already there. The fighter Grace mentioned, she was always there. You just needed to remember her." The next week, as May turned toward June, Sarah did something unprecedented. She suggested a coffee date with James. Not a training session, not a gym meeting, but actual coffee at the Third Ward Cafe she used to love. Sitting across from him in civilian clothes, she was struck by how different they both looked outside the gym context. He wore a button-down that didn't quite hide all his scars, and she wore a new blouse she'd bought in Chicago, one that fit her actual body instead of hiding it. "This feels like a date," James said with characteristic directness. "Maybe it is," Sarah replied, surprising herself with her boldness. James smiled, the expression transforming his scarred face into something beautiful. "I should probably tell you that I don't date clients. Then I should probably tell you that I'm thinking of switching to Grace's evening classes exclusively." They both laughed, the tension breaking into something warm and possible. As they talked, Sarah became aware of the other patrons in the cafe. A few months ago, she would have assumed they were judging her, wondering what someone like James was doing with someone like her. Now she realized most of them weren't looking at all, and those who were seemed to see just another couple having coffee on a Tuesday afternoon. Maya joined them eventually, having been summoned by Sarah via text to provide a buffer if things got awkward. Instead, she found Sarah laughing at something James had said, her whole face animated in a way Maya hadn't seen in years. "So you're the famous Maya," James said, standing to shake her hand. "Sarah's told me a lot about you." "All terrible things, I'm sure," Maya replied, but she was looking at Sarah with an expression of such relief and joy that Sarah had to look away. As June progressed, Sarah's transformation continued. But it wasn't the dramatic before and after she'd once imagined. She'd lost some weight, yes, but more importantly, she'd gained strength, flexibility, and endurance. She could run a mile without stopping. She could lift weights that would have seemed impossible in February. She could look at herself in the mirror without flinching. One evening, after a particularly intense training session, Grace pulled Sarah aside. "You know you're one of my success stories, right?" Sarah shook her head. "I haven't reached my goal weight." "Honey," Grace said firmly, "if you think this was ever about weight, you haven't been paying attention. You walked in here in March looking like a ghost. Now look at you. You're alive. You're dating that gorgeous scarred man who looks at you like you hung the moon. You're showing up for your sister. You're living. That's the only transformation that matters." That night, Sarah did something she hadn't done in over 2 years. She posted a photo on Instagram. It was from the bachelorette party, her and Emma on the rooftop, Chicago sparkling behind them. She didn't use any filters, didn't crop out her body, didn't hide behind anyone. The caption read, "Getting stronger every day, inside and out." Within minutes, her phone was buzzing with likes and comments. Old friends expressing joy at seeing her again, colleagues saying she looked happy, and one comment from Marcus's new girlfriend. "You look amazing. That dress is perfect on you." Sarah stared at the comment for a long moment, waiting for the familiar stab of pain and shame. Instead, she felt nothing, or rather, she felt free. She deleted Marcus's girlfriend from her followers, not from anger, but from a calm certainty that she didn't need that chapter of her life intruding on this one. James texted her, "Saw your post. You're beautiful, but more importantly, you look happy." Sarah smiled, typing back, "I am." And for the first time in 2 years, it was the complete truth. August arrived in Milwaukee with a heat wave that made everyone move a little slower, except for Sarah, who felt like she was racing towards something momentous. Emma's wedding was in 2 weeks, and the Emerald Maid of Honor dress hung in Sarah's closet like a promise she'd made to herself. Standing in front of her bathroom mirror on a Saturday morning, Sarah hardly recognized the woman looking back. Not because she'd become miraculously thin, she hadn't. But her posture was different, shoulders back instead of hunched forward. Her arms had definition from months of boxing. Her face had color from the morning runs along Lake Michigan. Most importantly, her eyes held a light that had been extinguished for so long she'd forgotten it existed. "You ready for this?" James asked from her bedroom doorway. They'd been officially dating for 6 weeks now, and he'd stayed over for the first time last night. Seeing him in her space, comfortable and unguarded, with his scars visible in the morning light, felt like another kind of transformation. "For the dress rehearsal?" "I think so," Sarah said, turning to face him. Today was the wedding rehearsal, her first time seeing extended family since she'd gone into hiding. James crossed the room and put his hands on her shoulders. "You're going to be amazing. And if anyone says anything stupid, Grace taught you that right hook for a reason." Sarah laughed, leaning into his touch. The physical comfort of being held, of being desired, of being seen as worthy of affection. These were gifts she was still learning to accept. The rehearsal venue was at the Milwaukee Art Museum, its iconic wings spread against the lake. Sarah arrived early, wanting to center herself before the chaos began. She found Emma in the bridal suite, surrounded by hairpins and a crisis about the flower arrangements. "The peonies are wilting," Emma said, near tears. "The florist says it's the heat, but this is a disaster." Sarah looked at her sister, radiant even in distress, and felt a calm wash over her. "Hey," she said, taking Emma's hands. "Remember when we were kids and Mum's garden would wilt in the summer? We'd cut the stems and put them in the refrigerator. Let me handle this." For the next hour, Sarah took charge in a way she never would have 6 months ago. She coordinated with the venue staff to refrigerate the flowers, negotiated with the florist for backup arrangements, and managed to solve 3 other minor crises along the way. The old Sarah would have hidden in the background, but this Sarah knew she had valuable skills, knew she could take up space and solve problems. When the extended family arrived, Sarah braced herself for comments about her appearance. Aunt Linda, notorious for her lack of filter, approached first. "Sarah, you look..." Linda paused, and Sarah waited for the inevitable comment about her weight. "You look happy. Really, genuinely happy. It's wonderful to see." The pattern repeated throughout the afternoon. People noticed something different about her, but it wasn't what she'd expected them to focus on. They mentioned her energy, her confidence, the way she commanded attention when organizing the wedding party. Her cousin Mark, who'd always been particularly cruel about weight in their childhood, pulled her aside. "I owe you an apology," he said unexpectedly, "for all the things I said when we were younger. I was dealing with my own issues and took them out on you. You didn't deserve that." Sarah was speechless for a moment, then managed, "Thank you. That means a lot." During the rehearsal dinner, Sarah gave a speech she'd been working on for weeks. Standing at the microphone, looking out at the assembled friends and family, she felt the old panic try to rise. Then she caught James's eye from his table. He gave her the smallest nod, and she found her voice. "Emma asked me to be her maid of honor 8 months ago," Sarah began. "At the time, I was in a dark place. I'd forgotten who I was, forgotten that I deserved to take up space in this world. But Emma didn't forget. She saw her sister even when I couldn't see myself. This wedding, this celebration of love, became my deadline to transform. But here's what I learned. Transformation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about uncovering who you always were, underneath the fear and shame." She looked directly at Emma, whose eyes were already glistening with tears. "Emma, you and Tom have something special, because you see each other, truly see each other, flaws and all, and choose love anyway. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for not letting me disappear." The room erupted in applause, and Sarah felt Maya filming from her table, capturing this moment of triumph. As she returned to her seat, relatives kept stopping her to say how moving her speech was. Her mother squeezed her hand so tight it almost hurt. Later that evening, as the party wound down, Sarah found herself on the museum's terrace with Grace, who'd been invited as Sarah's +1 to the dinner. They stood looking out at Lake Michigan, the water calm and infinite under the stars. "You know what I love about your story," Grace said. "It's not a before and after, it's a during. You're still becoming, still growing. That's the real transformation, accepting that we're always in process." The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, the August heat breaking overnight into a gentle breeze off the lake. Sarah woke early in her hotel room, the maid of honor dress hanging by the window. She put it on slowly, like armor for a battle she'd already won. When she looked in the full-length mirror, she didn't see the things she used to fixate on. She saw strong shoulders from months of boxing. She saw legs that could run 3 miles. She saw a woman who'd fought her way back from the darkest place she'd ever been. The photographer captured her helping Emma into her wedding dress, and later Sarah would treasure these images, not because she looked thin, but because she looked present, engaged, alive. In every photo, she was smiling genuinely, not the forced grimace she'd perfected for cameras, but real joy. As they lined up for the processional, Emma turned to her. "You're glowing," she said, "literally glowing." Sarah thought about James waiting in the congregation, about the life she was building, about the morning runs she'd come to love, about Grace's friendship, about Maya's unwavering support. "I feel like myself," she said. "For the first time in years, I feel like myself." Walking down the aisle, Sarah didn't shrink from the eyes upon her. She walked tall, shoulders back, making eye contact with friends and family. When she caught Marcus in the crowd, he was dating Tom's cousin now, she felt nothing but a mild curiosity about how she'd ever let his opinion matter so much. During the ceremony, as Emma and Tom exchanged vows about seeing each other through seasons of change, Sarah thought about her own seasons. The winter of her despair, the spring of tentative hope, the summer of growth and possibility. And now, standing here in August, she understood that transformation wasn't a destination, but a journey. At the reception, Sarah danced. Not the self-conscious swaying she might have done before, but real dancing. She danced with her father, with Tom's grandfather, with a group of Emma's college friends. When James finally claimed her for a slow song, she melted into his arms without worrying about how they looked to others. "I love you," he said quietly, the first time either of them had said it. "Not the person you're becoming, not the person you might be someday. You, right now, exactly as you are." Sarah pulled back to look at him. This man who understood transformation and survival, who saw her clearly and chose to stay. "I love you too," she said, scars and all. As the night wore on, Sarah found herself in the bathroom, touching up her lipstick when a group of younger cousins came in, complaining about their bodies, about the photos, about how they looked in their dresses. Sarah listened for a moment, hearing her own old voice in their words. "Can I tell you something?" she said, and they turned to her in surprise. "I spent 2 years hating my body, hiding from cameras, missing out on life because I thought I wasn't thin enough to deserve happiness. You know what I learned? Your body is not an apology. It's not a before picture waiting for an after. It's the vehicle that carries you through this one precious life. Be gentle with it. Be grateful for it. Feed it well and move it often, not as punishment, but as celebration. And please don't wait to live your life until you think you look perfect. Perfect doesn't exist, but this moment does." One of the cousins, barely 20, asked, "But how did you stop caring what people think?" Sarah smiled. "I didn't stop caring, I just started caring more about what I think. And I think I'm strong. I think I'm capable. I think I'm worthy of love and respect and taking up space in this world. The transformation isn't about your body, it's about your mind." As the reception ended and the guests began departing, Sarah stood with Emma and Tom for one last photo. The photographer suggested she stand slightly behind them, the typical hiding position she would have naturally assumed months ago. "Actually," Sarah said, "I'll stand right here beside them. I'm not hiding anymore." The next morning, as Sarah and James had breakfast at the hotel, her phone buzzed with notifications. Emma had posted the wedding photos on social media, and one in particular was going viral in their circle. Sarah, mid-laugh during her maid of honor speech, radiating confidence and joy. The comments poured in. "You look amazing. What a transformation. Incredible journey." But the comment that meant the most came from Emma. "My sister saved my wedding day 100 times over, but more importantly, she saved herself. So proud to stand beside you today and always." 6 months ago, Sarah had marked her calendar with Emma's wedding date like a deadline for becoming someone else. Now, sitting in the morning light with James, wearing the same body she despised but seeing it through transformed eyes, she understood the truth. She hadn't become someone else. She'd become herself, and that was the only transformation that ever really mattered. Looking at James, at the messages from friends, at the photos where she stood tall and unashamed, Sarah made a decision. She pulled out her phone and typed a post. "I was ashamed of my body. Now I'm proud of my transformation. Not because I became smaller, but because I became stronger. Not because I lost weight, but because I lost the shame. To anyone hiding like I was, your life is waiting for you. Not when you're perfect, but right now. You deserve to take up space. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to dance at the wedding, to wear the dress, to fall in love, to live fully in the body you have today." She tagged Grace, who taught her strength. She tagged Maya, who'd never stopped believing. She tagged Emma, who'd given her a deadline that became a lifeline. And she tagged James, who saw her scars as proof of survival, not damage. As she hit share, Sarah felt the last piece of her old self, the one who hid, who apologized for existing, who believed she was unworthy, finally fade away. In her place stood a woman who knew that transformation wasn't about the size of her body, but the size of her life. And her life at last was enormous.